All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. It was very short notice, so I will share my some of the thoughts I and others have been having lately about Tunisia, and look forward to a discussion. Um, so, President Said has now been in office for 4 years. And there has been a deterioration in the economy. The standard of living has deteriorated. Economic growth is in the negative numbers. Inflation is quite high. And in human rights, obviously, the deterioration is very marked, and there is concern in Washington, there is concern in the Biden administration over that. In political terms, both in domestic and foreign policies, there is nothing remarkable that has been achieved. In fact, quite the contrary. In that sense, in the foreign policy sense, the latest to come out of Tunisia is this sudden decision to send an ambassador to Damascus. And the timing of this is very interesting, and it raises legitimate questions as to who suggested this to the president of Tunisia, and in return for what exactly? Personally, I think Gulf countries have a lot to do with this, in particular Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, because of the rapprochement going on over there with the regime in Damascus. Now, for the US, this poses a dilemma. There has been a question in Washington as to the IMF proposed grant, or a grant that is being considered to help bail out the Tunisian economy. One side of the administration would like to use the IMF grant as leverage. In other words, wave it in front of the regime, in front of the president, and say, you can have this grant, but conditional on certain reforms. The other side to this is not to use this as leverage, because if the grant is denied, it would only hurt the Tunisian people and the Tunisian economy, and it would not have any noticeable effect, positive effect on the president of Tunisia. I link the two things because there is the possibility that behind the decision to send a Tunisian ambassador to Damascus is a promise of funds from the Gulf. And for the Biden administration, any money that might be promised or might be forthcoming from the US or from the IMF can be counteracted by money from the Gulf. And therefore, any pressure, any leverage hoped to be gained from denying or threatening to deny funds would end up with no impact whatsoever if the money can be made up elsewhere. It has been a dilemma for various administrations since the Arab uprising of 2011, the hesitation of how to assist and when to assist governments that were then in transition, and many of which have since regressed. The question for the Biden administration is one of course, we desire to see democracy thrive in Tunisia, but how exactly to do this? Can the government be enticed to change? Can reforms from above be assisted somehow? And frankly, in my opinion and the opinions of many others, this is a dead end. It seems like the presidency in Tunisia these days is not at all listening to good advice from many friends of Tunisia in the US and in Europe. The alternative, and that has always been an option from 2011, is not to work with governments that resist change, but to work directly with the people, to work directly with civil society. The problem, of course, is that civil society in the Arab world, and in Tunisia in this case, is not always responsive, is afraid of repercussions at home if they deal with foreign governments, if they accept assistance, particularly from the US. And frankly, many civil society groups have lost hope in a relationship, in a constructive relationship with the United States. So it's a dilemma, and it recurs in several countries in the region. There is no one solution that fits all. To some extent, if we compare the situation with some other countries suffering from a great deal of corruption and a lack of responsiveness to good advice from governments, Lebanon, for example. One solution, which I have suggested in an article about a year ago, is an international development fund that pools resources from various countries wishing to help. And instead of giving the aid on a bilateral basis, putting it into projects directly into the economy and managed by a board of experts from outside the country. The point being that the economy needs help, the people need help. At this point, violence would probably only cause chaos and would delay any meaningful reforms. And so perhaps economic assistance would eventually lead to political progress. As I say, it's a dilemma. There is no guarantee that any of the suggested alternatives, options would work, would produce the positive results needed. Much is needed from Tunisia itself, ideas from civil society, from people who want to see democratic change in their country. Suggestions, particularly if those ideas could be pooled, if civil society in Tunisia could agree on a plan, on a particular strategy, and then invite foreign assistance based on that plan. In the end of the day, I think Tunisians know best what is good for their country. And solutions imposed one way or another from outside historically have proven not to help. But that's what I have to say for now, and I look forward to any discussion that follows.